turn it off. All right, there we go. Antisocial here coming to you for the Portland Horror Film Festival. This is the Antisocial Horror, not
Horror, not horror. Horror or horror?
It sounds like somebody like has gotten drunk in the middle of the. It's a horror show. Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Sinister Cinema story done by Mr. Jack Perez, who has awesomely given up his time for today,
Oh,
like all
wow.
of it, like 10 years worth.
Nah, it's fine.
So, Jack, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm all
So
yours,
nice to meet you. Long time no
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. I feel like we've known
We've
each
known
other
each other for hours.
another right hours. It just feels that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I've read your mind. Um,
Yeah. How did that happen?
let's do talk about Mr. Luce, whose name also means light, and enlighten the world about people, enlighten the people about the world of Sinister Cinema.
Right. Well, what got me excited about this was the catalog, the Sinister Cinema catalog, which now unfortunately only exists online, but for many years was a printed, it was almost like the equivalent of a Sears sort of Christmas toy catalog. At least that's how I perceived it when I was
Did you start with the just the written one, or did you start with the graphic one?
well, I what I remember, yeah, I wasn't what I remember was this beautiful sort of combination of just reduced one sheet poster artwork and these kind of TV guide synopses. And it was thousands of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy titles, some of which became the only play, some of which we obviously know, like Night of the Living Dead and Carnival of Souls and
Oh,
the
Carnival
Devil,
Souls yeah, it's one of those
the
movies that everyone.
Devil Bat, and things that became like
Yeah.
much more widely known. But even in the 80s, Sinister Cinema was the place to get the best sort of print, VHS print of it. But anyway, that catalog was just thousands of these titles, and most of them were titles that I had never heard of. And I came from a hardcore, I was like a hardcore sci-fi horror nerd, so I sort of prided myself on knowing all the stuff.
The
And
brand that
it,
would not die and
yeah,
all
you
that
would,
kind of
there were
thing.
titles, yeah, stuff that the normal moviegoer would not know. But the Sinister Cinema catalog still had thousands of these titles, posters and synopses that would just like, just light you up like, holy shit, what is this movie? This sounds insane. And there was just title after title after title. So over the years, I would order, like every geek, I would order from Greg Luce, who runs the company. And I never really thought of where they were or what kind of operation it was. I was just grateful they existed.
Yeah.
And then when I finally moved up here to Portland, after 30 years directing in Hollywood, I kind of was looking at an old Sinister Cinema catalog just because for enjoyment. It's like when you pick up an old comic book
Yeah,
or
it
a
becomes a
movie
piece.
book, you're like, oh, I just want to, get off on this. And
Yeah.
I looked at the mailing address, and it said Medford, Oregon. And I don't pretend to know anything outside of Portland in terms of
And the only
Oregon.
Medford I know is in Boston, and we
Right.
pronounce it Medford.
Right, exactly. So I was like, well, Medford can't be, it's in the state. So I basically just picked up the phone and called him and said, look, I'm a lifelong fan. Very fortunately, he knew some of my films, so he didn't think I was like a lunatic. And I said,
Or if I called, he would have just thought lunatic.
and I just said, hey, I don't think anybody's ever done a proper documentary or a portrait or a profile or anything. And I, as a fan, am interested. And if you don't mind, I'd like to sit down and interview you, and you can tell me like, how did this all happen?
Mhm.
And that's really what it came from. I don't pretend to be a professional documentarian. My
Right.
my 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 meat and potatoes has always been, narrative film. But
Next week, the history of Pornhub. Nope.
right. But I was really into his story. And when I sat down and finally interviewed him, I realized that he was just like, it's like Freaks, one of us.
Yeah.
He was a
That's another one of
hardcore,
my favorite movies. Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
he was a hardcore nerd who has dedicated his life to curating this amazing collection of cinema, which I think, if it was not for him, would otherwise be undiscovered or remain undiscovered or forgotten. So that was really the MO in going after this.
I had never even heard Sand and Sandals movies.
Sword and sandal, right, right.
Sword and
Well,
sandals. I hadn't
well, the
even heard that phrase before him.
that's always been a subset of the catalog, which is just like a lot of them were Italian made in the 60s. Steve Reeves,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, Steve Reeves.
pictures, and then Greg goes on about how beautiful he finds Steve Reeves as the perfect physique. Uh, but having done Hercules and Xena, that's the offshoot of that genre, really. Sword and Sandal is like
I still
Hercules.
think Bruce Campbell can be a little, yeah.
So yeah, so that was really the impetus was really kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, it's right here. I want to learn about how this actually came to be.
And
So
I'm sure like the Renaissance pictures folks looked at that stuff as well because I
oh
don't think
yeah,
you could have invented Antilochus without, some of that.
right. Oh, totally, totally. It's like, but again, like something like, like you throw out Reptilicus, which is the Danish Godzilla, but unless you're a sort of dyed-in-the-wool monster
Kaiju and
kid,
monster fan.
you're
Yeah.
not
We're
Reptilicus, you're gonna
kaiju-aholics, so
yeah, yeah. So you're not gonna know what that is. And again, like even if you do know what Reptilicus is, there's a whole other dozen films like Reptilicus that you haven't heard of, but Greg has in his catalog.
right.
So that's what's super cool about his business and his world,
And I love his honesty of, I like it because there'll be more than 12 sentences about
Right, right. That's true. Like I said, like you
great
have these
line.
sort of like these like single paragraphs for certain titles, and then you'll see this like he really got off on this
Yeah.
one and writes more.
Ulysses of, yeah.
Correct, correct. So yeah, so it was really interesting to hear, how he, had this career as like a rock jock DJ, but was really always a horror kid and decided to like, what, I'm going to do this for my life's work, and he still does it.
And
That's
his
the way.
daughter is helping him out.
Yeah, it's a family business, and it's
Yeah.
just really the definition of a mom and pop operation. Where he runs it out of his house and has since the 80s, and
So cool.
it's
And
so cool. Yeah.
the pictures of the films, the reels and reels and reels just made me so happy.
Right. Yeah,
I
yeah. It's
love
just
film. Um,
sure.
uh, I know we're shorter in time. So what I was going to ask you is if you could give me one or two films that you've done of your own that you would like people to see
Oh, sure.
in
Well, yeah.
addition to this.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I mean, most of my stuff has been narrative stuff. I mean, there's this Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, which I'm responsible for, but you don't need to see. If I was going to pick two, it would probably be Some Guy Who Kills People, which is the film that John Landis executive produced with Kevin Corrigan and Barry Bostwick and the late great Karen Black and
Yeah.
Lucy Davis. That's a real personal favorite of mine.
What was it like working with Karen Black? Oh my gosh.
Oh God, it was just, I mean,
Everybody
again,
loves
like
her.
working with Adam West, like Adam, I
Another
was,
one of the films that you've done. Yes,
yeah,
Adam
so I
West
did a
is one of my
film.
heroes.
Yeah, so that was like a dream because like, it was with the one circumstance where in my career where I wrote a part for somebody, hoping against hope that they might say yes. And I wrote a part for Adam West.
And he didn't
And,
have to wear
and
tights.
and no, and he said yes, and he turned out to be the coolest guy you ever would want him to be. I mean, he was exactly what you want. He was the coolest. And Karen was the same way. Like I had been raised on Karen Black movies, everything from
Yeah,
like the real serious, Five Easy Pieces and Day of the Locusts and Easy Rider, and then
yeah, Easy Rider.
Airport 75 and Capricorn One and Burn Offerings and all these movies. And she was also just a real joy and a freak, in the best way. And we became really close. And so um, I was been very lucky to work with some actors that I really admired as a kid, and then got
Yeah.
the chance to work with them.
Yeah, I keep dreaming I'm going to run into Jeffrey Combs and Amanda Plummer and Lily Taylor. Those are like my three.
Oh yeah.
I
Well,
really want to.
it's a weird thing that happens if you're lucky enough where you're a fan and then somehow if you end up working professionally that somehow that fandom sort of fuses with your actual work, and it's a real surreal sort of circumstance. The other movie I was going to mention was this film I made in the late 90s called La Cucaracha, which is a south of the border noir that I'm particularly proud of, that I like.
What do you
I
like best about that one?
Well, again, it's like so much of what I like is either what I appreciate, what I would put forward as watch this rather than this,
Mhm.
is that I feel like it has more of myself in it, and it's the least these films are the films that are the least compromised creatively. We were talking about this earlier, the idea that when you take money from some force, whether it's a studio or a network or whatever, that comes with certain creative compromises, battles that you may lose, and those wind up in the movie. And when you make an independent movie, more often than not, you have more creative control. So I've always, these two movies were independently made, therefore they're the least compromised creatively, and they're the ones that I feel more comfortable saying, yeah, you should watch this one if you want to watch one of mine.
That's
Even though they're all mine, but you can't say, don't look at that part in this movie because that's
yeah,
because
exactly. Just don't
this,
worry about that
yeah,
section.
yeah, because this producer made me cast this person and take this and put this music in or whatever.
The
So,
teen idol had to go in this shot.
right.
We're
So those,
advertising this drink. Yeah.
but one of the reasons, like I come around to that, to what you were saying, is that La Cucaracha is set in Mexico, and originally we were going to shoot that movie in Mexico, but for various reasons, one of which was the production company's fear of having to pay off too much graft or
Oh,
potentially
yes.
kidnapping and all these other crazy things. So I had to shoot it in LA, and we ended up shooting recreating a big part of Mexico on the back lot at Universal
I was
Studios.
gonna say, did you go to East LA?
Yeah, no, it was back lot at Universal, but I remember as a little kid going on that uh, on the tram,
Yeah.
getting first, and so
You watch the
suddenly,
shark come up and
right, exactly, and so suddenly I'm, an adult making a film, watching the tram go by, and that's when you have one of those dreamlike sort of like moments where you're like, oh yeah, like this is where I started.
I'm on the opposite side.
Isn't that the luckiest thing that could ever possibly ever happen, to suddenly and that's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's like I really am grateful for
It's so
those
cool.
couple of moments, whether it's working with an actor like Adam West or Karen, or whatever. That's like that's like stepping. Like I have a friend of mine, Alan Havey, who was a fan.
Oh, Ellen, yeah, yeah,
Oh, do you know Alan?
yeah.
He's one of my oldest friends. All right,
That's funny.
so
Comedy,
Alan.
remember?
Yeah, that's right. So Alan, was a hardcore fan of Mad Men. Like he was like a fanboy of Mad Men,
That's
and then he ended up in the show. Like he ended up getting cast later as Lou Avery in the show,
that's
and
hilarious.
and to me that's like watching The Wizard of Oz and then like stepping into the TV and being in
I've got
Oz.
ruby slippers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was kind of like, you cannot like take that lightly. You have to say that is like, okay, you won the lottery. Like
Yeah.
that's like to a geek to suddenly have those things overlap is like a huge deal. So,
I would have been on the
um,
Carol Burnett show if that had worked out.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And truthfully, just sitting down with Greg Luce, was like that too, because for 100 years, he's been an abstraction and a catalog, and then it was like, no, now he's a friend of mine, and that's like super cool too. It's like the veil gets lifted, and
People get to
sometimes,
be people in your world instead of just
yeah,
ideas. Yeah.
yeah, or yeah, that's a really neat thing to happen,
That's
So
pretty awesome. So
yeah.
you're up in here in Portland now, permanently and you're teaching or you're doing your
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still making movies and I'm teaching. I'm actually teaching at the PCC, the Portland Community College up here in the multimedia department. So I just finished literally this week. We just finished the term, and yeah. So I enjoy teaching. It's to me the teaching part of it keeps me in when I was a student, and it reminds me of why I started making movies in the first place. It keeps it pure outside of all the mishigas of Hollywood.
the crazy of the Hollywood. Before I wrap it up, what would you like to say to the Portland horror film audience?
Just that I'm really proud and honored to be included in this community, and I'm super excited about this festival, and I'm really hoping that more people who maybe have a cursory or no knowledge of Sinister Cinema get to realize that there's been this guy who's been doing this, bringing basically horror to the people for since the 80s. And if
Right.
not for him, so many of these films would be
What
forgotten.
Ronco was to music.
Right,
No,
exactly. Like
this guy is to the films.
he's the guy to definitely genre film. So yeah, Yeah.
That's so
So,
cool. Well, we're gonna leave that at that because we're gonna have a conversation later, and we're gonna do more talking with
okay.
for
Yeah.
another time. But for now, for the Portland Horror Film Festival, this has been your anti-social horror-ish show, and we are glad to talk to the Portland Horror Film Festival folks, and we hope to see you soon.
See you.